All right, folks, hello and welcome back to online English class. Hope you guys are doing well today. Today we're going to be working through OTN 7, which analyzes the first portion of Part 3, in which Marlowe arrives at the interstation and confronts Kurt's person-to-person, man-to-man. We're going to be conducting an SQ3R for this portion of text. All right, so today should be a relatively straightforward, simple, and also brief class before we get into more extensive analysis of the meaning of these pieces of text later in this week. All right, so before we get into that SQ3R, let's just spend some time with the top of the week announcements. First and foremost, make sure that you're keeping up with your discussion grade procedure. Make sure that your engagement with that daily task is authentic. All right, though short, those comments need to reflect genuine engagement and thought about the content that's being discussed. Okay, so beyond that, make sure that you send your reading check for Heart of Darkness Part 3 by 3 p.m. today. Make sure that you send email confirmation of your completion of OTNs 5, 6, and 7 by Friday at 3 p.m. Okay, so do not send me that email today because we have not completed OTN 7. All right, we're just now starting it. So if I get that email from you today, all right, you just see that you're supposed to do that and you rotely send an email. It is indicative to me that you are A, not paying close attention, and B, dishonestly telling me and confirming that you've completed work that you have not completed. There's no way you would have completed OTN 7. So be sure that you are paying close attention to what I'm asking you to do and that your emails reflect valid true statements about the completion of your work. Okay, so beyond that, all right, we're going to continue completing our OTNs as we complete them in class, and then you need to continue to work on the quarter 4 essay, which is going to be due the last week of school from May 18th to May 22nd. All right, so once we finish our work on Unit 6, Analyzing Heart of Darkness, we're going to turn our attention to the drafting process for your quarter 4 essay, and then you will submit that quarter 4 essay from May 18th to 22nd, and your duties for the class will have come to an end. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into OTN 7. All right, OTN 7 is centered on analyzing pages 119 to 134, in which Marlowe and other characters are confronted with and required to and grapple with the inner truth that Kurtz embodies. Okay, so this is a picture of Kurtz from a modern retelling of the story Heart of Darkness in a movie directed by a guy named Francis Coppola, and it's called Apocalypse Now. It's a pretty famous movie. And this is a guy named Marlon Brando, who is playing the role of Captain Kurtz, who is being chased down in Vietnam by a guy named Charlie Marlowe. All right, so in essence, what Part 3 is all about is it requires various characters to grapple with and confront the truth that Kurtz embodies. He in this way becomes this kind of nexus point, all right, a centerpiece of the construction of the worldviews of the characters that surround him. It illustrates their interiority. It illustrates who they truly are through the way that they react to and respond to Kurtz's quote-unquote inner truth, okay? So let's go ahead and conduct our SQ3R quickly. Who is our speaker? Well, it is, as it has been for the majority of the narrative, Marlowe. Okay, so Marlowe's our first-person narrator, and he's telling about his journey into the Congo. So last analysis, we watched Marlowe break the continuity of that narrative, and then in Part 3, all right, and the very end of Part 2, he goes back to that more linear narrative, okay, in which he is approaching Kurtz and the interstation, and that's going to culminate in a significant interaction between Marlowe and Kurtz that illustrates Kurtz's sort of essence or nature, and continues to problematize Marlowe's search for meaning. We'll get into the details of that later, right? So to summarize what Marlowe's journey has been all about up to this point, which if you're paying attention, you should already know this, but it's good in various stops along the way of our analysis to sort of look back and make sure that our understanding is coherent or logical, that our analysis adds up and makes sense. Okay, so he leaves Europe. Marlowe leaves Europe to look for an idea at the back of his life. He is, like any human pilgrim, looking for some kind of moral coherency to his existence, some kind of truth that is going to organize and orient his efforts, his work in life. All right, but while he's in the Congo searching for this meaning, he is confronted with the incoherency of the work of the Belgian Congo Company and the fraud that underlies human interactions as a whole. Okay, sort of poisoning, making, in Dante's words, right, making the whole world stink, undermining our trust in things as they appear, as they in phenomena as they appear to us on the surface. Okay. So Marlowe, when confronted with that fraud is called even further into the Congo, even further to press himself more deeply into this pilgrimage and unpack further layers of the world in which he inhabits. And there, as he goes deeper into the Congo, as we discussed last week, he begins to reckon with the fact that the natural world is not governed by some kind of natural law or inherent moral code, but rather the natural world is hostile to moral idealism, because the natural world is governed by the amoral pursuit of survival. All right, all living things are simply attempting to maintain the fact that they are alive. All right, and that is their most vital, their most basic compulsion. All right, everything else is a made-up story that human beings, a fairly sophisticated animal, right, but an animal nonetheless, creates in order to justify those wills to power and pleasure. Okay, so Kurtz, who Marlowe considers to be a kind of savior or redeemer of this kind of chaotic, amoral life, turns out to be an individual who has embraced it most fully. All right, an individual who has embraced an unmitigated understanding of the world that he lives in. He's been stripped of all moral pretenses. He has embraced the ethic of the food chain. You can call it a couple different things, but basically, on the most basic level, he just affirms the fact that the will to power and the will to pleasure are the only ends of the mortal life. And in doing so, Kurtz dismisses any kind of lingering belief that he might have had or that might have motivated him early on in his life in the kind of immortality of the soul or the inherent value of human life. Okay, or the human spirit, as often referred to in sort of colloquial armchair philosophy. Whatever that is, whatever that thing that makes humanity inherently valuable, the distinction between, tuna and deer, the reason why tuna gets to shoot the deer and the deer doesn't get to shoot tuna, right? That distinction is simply arbitrary, right? That Kurtz and his will to power and his will to pleasure is the only thing that matters, and therefore there is no immortal soul. There is no God. There is no ultimate justifier, and there is no responsibility or accountability for one's actions. Okay, hence Kurtz's willingness to be worshipped as a god. All right, because in a very real sense, Kurtz is the God of his world, just as we all are the gods of our own existences. We are our own ultimate. Okay. Right, but that truth, as Kurtz relinquishes his understanding or his belief or affirmation of his own immortal soul, so too that belief, although it blesses him with sort of worldly power and worldly pleasure, as he embraces his own carnality, right? Carnality, or the carnal physical world, embraces him back, and that leads to both. All right, the extension of power and pleasure, right? He becomes a sort of pampered favorite of the world, but, all right, he also is deteriorating, right? As he embraces the fact that there is no immortal soul, so too Kurtz's mortality is slowly but surely taking him over, disintegrating his body. and leading the world to its ultimate end, just as Kurtz is being led to his ultimate end, annihilation, disintegration, death. All right? So during the next phase of the narrative, basically what's going to happen is Marlowe is going to bring us to the moment in which he sees Kurtz's essence most clearly, and he, along with other characters, is forced to respond to the reality that Kurtz embodies. Okay? So, what's the genre or the style of this text? Well, it's just a symbolic journey narrative, okay? So all of the aspects of Marlowe's experiences are meant to be read on a sort of symbolic or philosophical or theological level, all right? What's the title of this text? It's part 3, pages 119 to 134. Okay, so significantly back at the end of part 2, the logic of the plot as we expected it to unfold has already been sort of destroyed. It's already been messed up. And Conrad uses the next scenes, the scenes that serve as the climax of Marlowe's experiences in the Congo, that climax which has already been undermined and kind of screwed up by the anticlimactic digression offered at the end of part 2, all right, is used not to reveal us to the not to reveal to us the disappointing information that Kurtz is not a good man, but rather, all right, to bring us and bring Marlowe to a climactic understanding of Kurtz's essential nature, all right, and some of the problems inherent with living a simply carnal life. Embracing a simply material existence, why that is problematic, all right? And even as he does so, he allows other characters like the native population, the manager, and the Harlequin to develop their own responses to Kurtz, which characterizes both them and also Kurtz more fully, all right? So this is a tricky little section of text, and it's chock full with meaning, so we'll be working through it pretty slowly and steadily through the course of this week. All right, quick recitation of what happens. All right, at the beginning of part 3, Marlowe is talking to the Russian ivory trader, who he refers to as the Harlequin. Harlequin just means the clown, because the Russian ivory trader is dressed up in almost like clown clothing. Okay, because he's been in the Congo so long. Now the Harlequin explains that Kurtz needs to be taken out of the Congo as quickly as possible, and he needs to be taken to aid and safety and medical attention so that he can survive. The Harlequin highly values Kurtz. He views Kurtz as a kind of remarkable, exceptional, special man. All right, we'll talk about why that is. Marlowe, as he approaches the interstation, sees through his binoculars, as he inspects the station, a kind of collection of severed heads on pikes that are surrounding Kurtz's quarters. Again, Marlowe is beginning to recognize that this man Kurtz, in the sort of timeline of his experiences in the Congo, is not who he thought he was. Okay, the company men bring Kurtz out on a stretcher. They leave him in the steamer, and they are set to leave the following morning. Okay, they're going to start off on the return journey downriver, taking Kurtz out of the Congo and back to medical safety, right? A native woman who Marlowe describes follows Kurtz to the ship and sort of stares down the people in the ship, and Marlowe finds this individual, this native woman, extremely striking. We'll talk about the significance of the native population as a whole's response to Kurtz later in our analysis. Okay, the manager has a heated conversation with Kurtz in the cabin. All right, Kurtz doesn't want to be taken out of the interstation. He wants to remain there. The manager basically says that the company is ordering him back, and that Kurtz is going to be punished because of his bad methods of collecting ivory in the Congolese interior. Okay, so this just emphasizes the manager's hypocrisy as he bashes Kurtz for doing honestly what the manager does a little more clandestinely, right, without any kind of makeup on. The Harlequin then confides in Marlowe that the attack on the steamship was actually ordered by Kurtz because Kurtz doesn't want to leave. All right. The night before their return journey, the night before they leave, Marlowe finds that Kurtz is attempting to crawl back to the inner station, and he is crawling on his way. Very ill, very sick, very decrepit, dying, but he is crawling back to the Congo anyways. And Marlowe needs to cut him off before he reaches any of his native followers, because if he doesn't, then Kurtz is most likely going to order another attack on the steamship while everyone there is asleep. The native individuals will stab them all to death, and Kurtz will remain in the inner station where he seems to want to stay. Marlowe cuts him off, and he tells Kurtz that if he goes along and if all of them die, then no one will remember Kurtz, all right? That his legacy will die, all right? That he will experience the kind of power that he wants, but only insofar as his mortal life will allow him to, that control will come to an end. And Marlowe, the manager, no one will be there to tell his story. No one will be able to account for the remarkable life that the man Kurtz led. That thought is too much for Kurtz to handle, and he turns around. All right? In our following classes, we'll be analyzing these sections of text very carefully, considering what they mean in the larger framework of Marlowe's symbolic pilgrimage to the heart of the Congolese interior. All right, have a great day.